This one is for the boys. This one is for the boys who are addicted to self-pity. This is for the boys who are complainers, who drown in negativity. It's for the boys that let self-doubt win over and over, that don't know how to believe in yourself. And maybe most importantly, it's for the boys that no matter how hard you work, how much you do, what you accomplish, never, ever feel good enough. It's for the boys. And I'm one of them. See, I am a recovering pessimist. It's learning to become an optimist. And this episode is going to be me sharing the lessons of the last 10 years of me learning to overcome my innate and destructive pessimism and self-doubt and become a man of belief and faith and optimism. And if you think this sounds corny, then either you've never had the same problems as me and this isn't for you, or you're horribly self-deluded. And if you're not the first, which is to say, if you're not in a place in your life that you would like to be, if you're not happy, if you're not fulfilled, if you're not making meaningful progress into the things that you want to make progress into, then I invite you to consider that maybe you've allowed yourself to be deluded. And maybe in fact, you too are a pessimist. Maybe you're addicted to it like I was. And maybe you need treatment. And see, I call myself a recovering pessimist because I think of it like alcoholism. Not that I am an alcoholic. I don't drink. In fact, substances have never been particularly compelling to me. And so because they were never that compelling to me, I assumed that, frankly, that I was better than anyone that struggled with substance. And it wasn't until the last few years, quite frankly, and I'm 29, it wasn't until the last few years that I realized that I had just as gripping of an addiction as anyone with their substances. And frankly, mine might even be more destructive than what theirs was. And just like anyone that struggles with a substance, whether it's a drug or alcohol or even something like porn, the struggle isn't actually the substance. That's a symptom of the real problem. Not to say that addiction isn't a real thing and there's not physiological processes that make addiction real. Obviously, there is. But the reason people become addicts and stay addicts and keep going back to their addiction is because there's some God-sized hole in their heart that never got filled. And so, my addiction to pessimism, I call myself recovering because I'd say 90% of the time, I'm a pretty optimistic chap. I smile, I compliment, I don't complain, I believe in myself, try to help other people believe in themselves. I see the light in the world, and frankly, I live a life that's full of a lot of joy. But there are some days, like today, that I feel a relapse near to occur. And maybe you feel like this most days. Maybe you never feel like this. I don't know. But for anyone that feels the same way that I feel today, which thankfully is not most days, but that I also have felt for most of my life, this episode is for you. And growing up, you've gotten a little bit of my story by now if you've been here for This is maybe the 4th episode. I grew up without a dad. I was kind of a chubby kid. And I lost all the time. We would play Super Smash Bros. Sometimes with the cousins. And it would be like a round robin. And we'd play, maybe not round robin. I don't know tournaments that well. I don't know. It was like tournament style. Like if you win, then you stay in. But like the bottom 1 or 2 people always get kicked out because there were a lot of us cousins. There's 7 siblings. We'd all go. It was like there's this closet and there's this little TV. This little TV, you'd open the closet door and then it's this TV there, and we'd all be like crowding around this, like, I don't know, maybe like 1.5 by 1.5 TV, just like smashing the buttons on the GameCube controllers and on Smash Bros. Melee. Fantastic times. Except that I was always the worst. And we'd play, and I'd like do my best, and then I would make a mistake, and then I'd get in my head, and then I would lose more. And I was always the youngest, so I'd lose more. So I'd lose first round, and I'd play 1 game, and then there would be another 5 games until I finally got the chance to go in again, and then I would lose again. And I was raised around cousins that played sports, and they were all better than me. They were more athletic than me, and I lost. I lost a lot. I lost a lot, and I don't say this to complain, but it's just what I got used to. And I was a really sensitive kid growing up. It's funny, my mom will make jokes now because I'm not that way now. And she'll make jokes and she'll be like, "You were my like sweet boy, and now you're this." And there's a point there. And I'm a lot more willing to connect now than I used to be. But the reason that I became that way is because I was very sensitive. And there were times growing up where it was like I'd feel upset about something, and instead of learning how to understand that, I'd get made fun of. And so when things got worse and worse at home and elsewhere, I learned that if I didn't react, that if I was cold, that I couldn't be affected, or so I thought. So I just pushed it all away, and I became stoic. But the reason that I tell you this story is not a lesson on stoicism, and it's not to complain. Like I've said before, I had a good childhood. It's because in the midst of that transformation, I inadvertently allowed myself to slowly become more and more addicted to negativity, to pessimism, to complaining, to judgment, to self-doubt, and to self-pity. And by the time I was a teenager, this became my whole personality. I was cynical, and not only was I cynical and negative, but I thought it was a good thing. It was like it was a flex. You know, someone would be enjoying something and I'd come over and crap on it because it was like, I don't know, maybe I wasn't that happy, and so I felt like no one else could be either. But I wasn't thinking that. I wasn't actively trying to ruin someone's day. Someone would just say something that was like, oh, I wanted something to hate on. I always found something to hate on. I always found something to complain about. I always found something to judge. I always found someone to criticize. And the result was that I was miserable. And I operated in this cycle of self-pity where it was like, I've had this hard thing and this hard thing and this hard thing, and I'm bitter about this, and they did this to me, and so I'm justified for the way that I'm acting, for the way that I feel, for the way that I am. And it was so backwards, but I didn't realize it. And it took me years and years of falling in the same patterns over and over and over again to finally realize that maybe, just maybe, I was the problem. And it wasn't the whole world around me, but it was me. And maybe there was a lesson that God wanted me to learn that I wasn't quite figuring out yet. And there's this quote. It's by C.S. Lewis. This was one of the turning points for me. It's in one of his books called The Great Divorce. And I'm going to give you a little picture of this book because it's a beautiful book. It's probably one of my top 10. C.S. Lewis, my goodness, when I meet the man, and I believe that I will meet the man, I'm going to give him a hug because he's a G. But in this book, The Great Divorce, it's basically this man, he wakes up and he's in this place. It's kind of this dreary place. And there's a bunch of people getting on the bus. So he gets in line and he gets on the bus. And this bus goes and it goes to this like field. And as you get to the field, there's all these other people on the bus. You kind of start to get the idea that there's kind of this like heaven hell paradigm. And he came from what was like a hell kind of like place, dreary and darker, and then he's moving into this lighter, brighter place. And he's not trying to teach any specific theology here, and I'm not trying to get into a theological debate, but the stories, the lessons that he tells through this are beautiful. And so this guy gets off this bus and he gets to this field, and this field's like this intermediate place, like this in between. And every person gets to this field and they have this angel that comes to them that they talk to. And for all these people, this angel is, for lack of better words, it's the conversation that they need to have. And you realize that these angels are coming from a better place, a place with God, which is, like this heaven that they're talking about. And the whole book is just him listening to these people have these conversations. But they're the hard conversations because they're the conversations of their vices, their addictions, like my pessimism, maybe yours, that they didn't want to give up, that they just could not give up. And because they couldn't give it up, they couldn't receive what God wanted to give them. And they kept themselves in this state of perpetual misery. And it was their choice. And there's this story I remember reading, and I think about it just about every day. And it's this man, and he meets his angel, and it's his wife. And they're talking, but as this man walks up, you realize that there's this guy in front of him who for lack of a better example, is like a skinny dweeby theater, like Edgar Allan Poe figure, kind of like a mopey, like skinny theater guy. He's like a joke of a guy, and you realize it's like this caricature. And there's this smaller guy to the left of this caricature that's holding like a leash around the neck of this thing. And the woman talks to the small guy, who you come to find out is actually her husband. And instead of him talking, he'll like shake the leash and this thing will speak for him. And as it goes on, he never explicitly says this, but you realize that it's this self-pity monster that he had allowed to take over his entire life. And there's this scene where she's talking to him, and the whole time she's talking to him, she's just trying to get him to let it go. Because she's like, listen, you don't understand the joy that you could have if you would just let this go. And she's talking to him, and that's where we get to this section. And at this point, she starts to point out what he's doing. And she's like, you keep doing it. You're doing it again. And he's like, what am I doing? And then get to this quote where she says, using pity, other people's pity, in the wrong way. We have all done it a bit on earth, you know. Pity was meant to be a spur that drives joy to help misery, but it can be used the wrong way round. It can be used for a kind of blackmailing. Those who choose misery can hold joy up to ransom by pity. You see, I know now. Even as a child you did it. Instead of saying you were sorry, you went and sulked in the attic, because you knew that sooner or later one of your sisters would say, I can't bear to think of him sitting up there alone, crying. You used your pity to blackmail them, and they gave in the end. And afterwards, when we were married, oh, it doesn't matter, if only you will stop it. And I thought about that for myself. And I don't know that I ever weaponized it maybe that much, but I did, and I think a lot of men especially, We weaponize self-pity against ourselves and against people around us by becoming a martyr because of things that happened to us, because of something someone did. For me, I had some hard experiences growing up. And instead of accepting them and moving on, I I held them like the man held this thing on the leash, and they became a part of me. And instead of letting them go, I used this self-pity, like, I can't believe this happened to me. Like, this happened to me, and so that's why I act this way. Or that's why I feel this way, and I deserve to be felt bad for, and I'm the victim, and I'm the underdog, and whatever. And then I read this next quote, and I read this often, where she's responding to him after he's given a snarky response to what she said. And she says, "No, Frank, not here," said the lady. "Listen to reason. Did you think joy was created to live always under that threat? Always defenseless against those who would rather be miserable than have their self-will crossed? For it was real misery. I know that now. You made yourself really wretched. That you can still do, but you can no longer communicate your wretchedness. Everything becomes more and more itself. Here is joy that cannot be shaken. Our light can swallow up your darkness, but your darkness cannot now infect our light. No, no, no. Come to us. We will not go to you. Can you really have thought that love and joy would always be at the mercy of frowns and sighs? Did you not know they were stronger than their opposites?" The the last year for me was a hard one, and frankly still is. The beginning of last year, I had some business pursuits that didn't work out, and they were tied into who I am and how I see myself, and it was just steeped in self-doubt, and I was in a bad financial situation. My mom went to the hospital. We didn't know how she was going to be, and the way that I felt was that I had been trying, and truthfully, I had been trying for 10 years, my entire adult life, to figure it out. And the result that I was getting over and over was that it falls apart. And I was just feeling bad about myself because of that. And then I discovered this book called As a Man Thinketh. And that's not what gave me the full answer, of course. But I remember there was one day I was walking. We'll get back to As a Man Thinketh here in just a minute. There's one day I was walking, and I was really struggling with it. And this is actually like before the real hard time this last year, where I just had this thought from God that was like, you need to stop complaining. And I never considered that that was an option, because I complained about everything all the time. And I'm not proud of it. It's just reality. And I said, okay. And so I remember I was walking. It was this like walk by the lake, Utah Lake. It's kind of like a gross lake, but it's really pretty, especially around sunset. So I was walking and I had that thought. I made a reel of it on Instagram actually, and it did decent, which was fun. But I was like, you know what, I'm gonna do a 24-hour challenge, and I'm not gonna complain for the whole 24 hours. Like, that's so long to not complain. Anyway, I did it. It's baby steps, addicts. And I did. And I had a fantastic day. And then I did it a little more, and I would have days here and there where I did it, but I kind of fell back into the same patterns. Q 2024, hard year. And it came to me again later that year, but a lot more profoundly, and with a lot more with it. And I was working FedEx, and I hated every second of it. I get there early, and I'm on the truck for 10 hours, get paid mincemeat, don't have the energy to work out, the money to eat what I want. I was barely scraping by. And I've never been suicidal or truly, truly deeply depressed. But I think of all the mental states I've been in, that's the lowest. And I was just rolling around in this truck, just simmering every day with misery of my own creation. And it was just like, what is the point? And it was this compilation, this buildup of just frustration with God and with myself. And it's like, what am I doing? Why am I doing it? What is the point of all of this that I keep trying? And it's just the same answer over and over and over again. And I didn't get any answers, and it didn't get any easier. But one day I was in Spotify, and when I'm stuck, I just start moving. Whether I'm stuck mentally or physically, whatever it is, I just start moving because I can't be stuck and stay still. That is my personal hell. So I moved, I worked, I listened to books, I listened to podcasts, I listened to music, I learned, I worked on content, I worked out, I did whatever I could to not feel stuck, even though here and in so many aspects of life I was stuck. And I discovered something, which is that on Spotify, there are a lot of free audiobooks, actually, which is a life hack. You can only have it's like a certain amount of hours every week or 2 weeks that you can listen to audiobooks, but it's quite a lot. I listened to quite a few books. And so it started suggesting books to me, and I was listening to music, and one day this book pops up called As a Man Thinketh. And I looked at it and just kind of had the thought, like, you should read that one. And I said, okay. So I read it. And then I read it again. And then I read it another 5 times that week because it had these gems that were just so unbelievable to me. And I had this moment where I realized that optimism is a choice, and so is negativity. Cynicism is a choice, and so is hope. I sat there in the truck and realized that it was this misery that I was feeling wasn't some curse God had given to me. It was a curse that I gave myself without realizing it. And it was one that He was trying desperately to help me get rid of. And I'll get back to that book. But right after this, I quit that stupid job. Don't ever work for FedEx. It sucks. It's not because it's hard either. It's a garbage job. I'm still a little bitter. Probably. They treated me fine. It's not it. Right after that, I went and did some sales, some door to door, which was fine. I sold fiber. I did a few trips, and one of the trips was in Florida. And mind you, this is in the midst of all the same struggles, even though it's after I've been on FedEx. So I'm starting to have this transformation, but I'm on the doors, and I've never done door to door before, and I did okay, but it's a mental struggle, and it was compounding the mental struggles that I was already having. And I had these couple of guys that I was on the trip with, really good guys. And every morning, because we didn't start selling until 11 or 12, we'd go to the beach. And this one guy, his name was Bernie, this big dude, just like a lovable bear. He was driving. We were driving to the beach, and I'm just sitting in the back, and I don't even remember what I said. I don't know if I said anything, but I was sitting in the back, and he's sitting in the front, and he looks at me in the rearview mirror, and he's like, "Terrell, listen, bro, I don't know you crazy well. He's like, if I've learned one thing about you, it's that you deserve the world, and you need to get out of your own way." And I thought about that. And I mean, I said thank you and thought about it and moved on. And every morning while I was there, I would go into the ocean, talk to them for a little bit, but mostly I just go till I was deep enough that I couldn't touch and swim back and forth. Because the combination of the sun and the negative ions, electrons from the water, which are real, by the way, grounding is real, and it's a massive redox boost. But the sunrise, plus that, plus the red light, plus the sound of the waves and my movement, it's super meditative. It's just the same reason that I like to go for morning barefoot walks now, even though it's not quite as good as the ocean. But I was in the ocean after that conversation, and I was thinking about that, and I was thinking, I don't know if I believe that I deserve this or that. And I was like, I don't know how to change whether or not I believe that. And swimming back and forth, just letting it settle. And then this thought came to me, said, maybe you deserve it, and maybe you don't. But either way, I want to give it to you. I had this realization that I don't know what I deserve and what I don't deserve. But in that moment, I understood. I understood that God wants to give us good gifts just because He can. And that we, thinking we don't deserve them, get in the way of Him giving them. And in that same trip, maybe that same day, I had this realization. I kind of had this like thought of the morning every time I was in the ocean. It was awesome. That's why my mornings are like vacation mode now. I had this realization as a secondary to that when Christ said, "Ask and ye shall receive," He wasn't just saying ask and then sit there. He was saying ask and then receive. And both halves of those are a commandment that He gave us. And I realized that I'd been asking a lot, but I hadn't been receiving much. And so then I thought about what it meant to receive the gifts that God has for me and why I hadn't been. And that led me back to the book that I had read, As a Man Thinketh, that I read 8 times in a week. It's like a 2-3 hour listen. Not super long, maybe only 2 hours. I listened to it on like 1.2x. 1.5 is way too fast. If you listen to books at 2x speed, you're a psychopath. You're not learning anything, and you need help. I mean, so much more help that I could give you. But 1.2x, sweet spot. Productivity meets efficiency meets creativity. 1.2x. No, you know. Anyway, I thought back to that book, and there were some of the things from that book that started to hit me. And there are 3 quotes in that book. There are so many gems, but there are 3 that were particularly profound. One is this quote that he says, "Man is made or unmade by himself. In the armory of thought, he forges the weapons with which he destroys himself. He also fashions the tools with which he built himself. heavenly mansions of joy and peace. Another is that he says, cause and effect is as absolute and undeviating in the hidden realm of thought as it is in the world of visible and material things. And then he goes on to say that the law of the harvest of reaping and sowing has not been repealed. And that one struck me. There's one more that I'll get to after this, but it struck me because in the Bible, every time Christ is teaching, we always talk about like you reap what you sow. And everyone talks about that, right? Because if you don't know what that means, right? Reaping, like the Grim Reaper, it's a tool that they used for harvest before they had big harvester machines like what we have now. I don't know what those are called. Doesn't matter. But it's like it's a scythe, right? It's like a handle, and then it's got like a curved blade, and you would. They're actually really fun. When I was in the Philippines, I played with them. So when you're reaping, you're taking that, you're cutting off the stalks, and you're reaping. And when you're sowing, that's what you're planting. It is to say, you get what you get out what you put in, or you get the fruits. You get out the fruits of what you put in, and you nourish. And this always made sense to me, right? It's like if I work harder, I'm going to get this. If I do this, I'm going to get that. If I work hard at work, I'm going to get more money. If blah 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 blah, I'll get X Y Z. But in this book, he points out, which I just had never thought before, that the law of the harvest, reaping and sowing, is just as applicable to thought as it is to every other aspect of reality, maybe even more applicable. And that who you are is a direct reflection of the thoughts that you have allowed to grow in your mind and in your heart. And the last one that hit me so hard was that self-doubt and fear always lead to failure. I didn't have to read that one because I think about it every day. The others I think about often. That one I think about every day. Because every day I sit with self-doubt. And most days aren't like today. But every day it pops in my mind. And every day I feel like the alcoholic that thinks maybe it would be worth it to just have a drink today. Maybe a little complaining would make me feel better. Maybe I could do just a little bit of self-pity today. Maybe that would make me feel better. And then this line pops into my head. Self-doubt and fear always lead to failure. And it's your choice. And so, on days like today, I keep moving. And I remember that the law of the harvest has not been repealed. That self-doubt and fear always lead to failure. And so, even though it feels so contrary to my nature, it's like repaving a dirt road with deep ruts from some big old wagon wheels, and trying to drive across the ruts back and forth until you can somehow repave the road. I keep trying because I understand that principle is true. And the funny thing is, in every single time that I have been successful in my life, it has not been through self-doubt or failure. And every time I have allowed myself to indulge, self-doubt and fear. And every time I have allowed myself to indulge self-doubt and fear, every single time I have eventually failed. But I want to look at the opposite side. When I was 11 years old, I learned to play guitar. I just taught myself. And I had an uncle. He'd pull out his guitar sometimes when we were camping, and he'd play Blackbird, and he'd play James Taylor. And I thought, man, that is beautiful. I would like to learn that. And so I asked my mom for a guitar, and she got me a guitar, and I banged my head against it until I learned it. But the reason why wasn't because I was sitting there thinking, "Oh, I'm not good enough. I'll never be good enough. I'll never be able to do this." It was because every time I played, I would imagine my uncle playing this song, and I was like, "Man, if he did it, I can do it." And that's faith. And faith is a divine principle because the law of the harvest hasn't been repealed. And when I was 18 and I decided that I was gonna unfat myself and I was gonna get healthy, I didn't do it by thinking about how awful I was. I did it by imagining how I could be, and for the first time believing that it was a possibility. So every day I'd get up and I'd go at it, and I'd do a little insanity, and I'd go for walks, and I slowly changed what I ate, and every day I'd get up and be like, man, this is gonna be cool. I can see who I'm becoming. And when I fixed my gut, I wasn't thinking about how awful I am and how there's no way I could ever do this. I just got up and I imagined what it would be like to feel amazing again. And now I do. And when I started trying to change my life 10 years ago, which yesterday, actually, I was thinking about, because if you can't tell, I'm very hard on myself. And I know people will watch this and be like, you need to suck it up and grow up. And maybe you're right. And if you know me in person, you know that I don't. What I'm sharing here, I don't spend time indulging in myself all day because it's not helpful. But I share because there's a part of me that thinks that I'm not the only one, and that maybe if I can help other people see that it's not the only way, then you can escape it. But I'm hard on myself, and so when it comes, that's what I start to think. I start to think about those times that I've been successful, and in the times when I haven't, uh, I recognize that that's why. Oh, this is what I was about to say. I got off track. Yesterday, I was thinking about this. This is a little bit of a tangent, but it's fine. And for some reason, the last 2 weeks, it's almost felt like demons whispering in my ear. And frankly, I think everything is this combination of physiological and spiritual. And I actually don't think there's a difference between the physiological and the spiritual. I think people will say that we're spiritual beings having a physical experience, but actually we're just spiritual beings having a spiritual experience, because light is sound is matter, and all light is God's light. And that's getting really, really meta, but that is to say that there is no spiritual or physical or spiritual and temporal, that it's all one. That being said, I had this realization, like, I'm hard on myself. And for some reason, the last 2 weeks, it's been a particular battle to not allow myself to be that, which is why today I'm talking about what I am. But I had this thought pop into my head that it was like, man, you started changing like this when you're about 18. And I didn't have control of a lot of things growing up. But since I've had the option for my entire adult life, this is what I have strived to be. And so if you're in a similar situation, I don't know, maybe you had a rough childhood or teenage years, maybe you did it to yourself. Maybe it's a situation you didn't have control of. Give yourself an honest appraisal and look and be like, maybe you're not perfect, but look back and honestly think, how long have you been trying? And you might see that maybe you've been viewing yourself and your own life through a bit of a cloudy lens, like Paul says, like we see darkly. But anyway, getting back to self-doubt and fear always lead to failure. And the pinnacle of all of these was some months ago. I was on a happy little barefoot walk. I th- I think I was home in Utah at this point. I was walking behind my house, and there's this verse in the Book of Mormon. And as a tangent, I'm going to mention verses that I've learned from the Book of Mormon. I'm not trying to preach. I'll mention verses that I learned from books that I learn. I believe it. You don't have to. There are books you don't have to believe that you could find wisdom from. So, if you decide to stop listening to me because of that, so be it. Hopefully, you'll be open-minded enough to think that maybe there's something for you to learn, even if you don't think that the whole of it is true. That being said, there's this verse, and it just says, Adam fell that men might be, and men are that they might have joy. And I was walking, same thing, thinking about things in a better spot than I had been. And just kind of talking to God, thinking myself, moving forward. I had this thought like men are that they might have joy. And then there was a follow-up to it. He said, men are that they might have joy. And that's why I made you. And it made me pause in my tracks. Because I think I spent my whole life, certainly my whole adult life, thinking I was made so that I could be good enough, so that I could have an empire, so that I could have a legacy, so that I could do this, so that I could do that. And I realized as I was sitting there that the end all be all, it is to create and to connect and to struggle and to strive and to create empires and to get strong and to learn and to become capable and all of that, and to create and to stand up for truth and to be a good man and to have a family and to provide for them and to be a light to the world and to use your gifts and your talents to create something incredible and to leave a legacy that will last for centuries, long beyond when you're gone. But the reason for all of that is joy. And it's because we have a God that loves us so much that he wants us to find joy in this moment and forever. And that's why he made me, and that's why he made you. And I sat with that. And I realized that I'd been thinking about it all wrong. And so we get to some active steps. As I've said, I'm a recovering pessimist. I don't have all the answers. But if I could give 18-year-old Terrell, that's me, some steps to set him free, even on days like today when I'm just not feeling it. And especially to make it so that days like this don't happen as much, and that on the rest of the days I can feel good, feel joy, enjoy life, build the things that I want to build. These are some of the steps that I would give. Number one, recognize that it is a choice. Belief is a choice. Faith is a choice. Pessimism, cynicism, self-doubt is a choice. And you don't have to choose it. That doesn't mean not choosing it is easy, because frankly, sometimes it's like a well-worn path, and you walk the well-worn path because you know where it leads. And it's a lot less comfortable to walk the untread path in your own mind and heart. But you have to understand this was not done to you. This was your reaction to things that were done to you. And that hurts, but it's empowering because you understand then that it's your choice. And if you can choose negativity, then you can choose optimism. If you can choose misery, you can choose joy. And it is your choice. Never, ever let anyone convince you that choosing to have a life of joy and optimism and smiles and vigor is not your choice. I don't care where you are, who you are, what your situation is, you do have the choice to choose it. Number two, which might seem a little paradoxical with what I just said, but number two is understand that sometimes you're just not going to feel amazing. And understand that sometimes you're going to have thoughts come into your head that are like self-doubt. And understand that some days you're going to feel frustrated. Maybe it's demons whispering in your ear. Maybe it's your own patterns coming up again. Maybe you're self-destructive, whatever it is. Sometimes you're going to have those thoughts come in. There's this book by Rick Rubin called The Creative Act. And he talks about self-doubt, specifically around Rick Rubin is like a producer. I actually don't know what Rick Rubin does because I don't think he actually makes the music. So maybe he just gets people in like the right mindset. I'm not saying he's a scammer. He's not. He does some cool stuff. I just don't understand. I don't know what he does. But anyway, he's got this really cool book. It's called The Creative Act. And there's this quote where he says, by accepting self-doubt, instead of trying to eliminate or repress it, we lessen its energy and interference. And in my own words, what I realized is stop fighting it and accept that it's there. And the moment that you accept it, you become free of it. This isn't just self-doubt. This is everything. The moment I accept that I'm frustrated today, I become free of it. And then I'm free to act and enjoy the present. The moment that I accept that I'm worried about my mom and I'm worried that I maybe I'm not going to be able to be successful in this thing that I'm building, or that my knee hurts. The moment that instead of fighting it, I just say, okay, I accept that it is. Not that it's always going to be, not that I'm going to do nothing, but I accept that it is. Then all of a sudden I become free to act independent of it. So instead of fighting so hard against every negative thought, let it be. Don't dwell on it. Don't let it simmer. Don't sit on it. But let it come in. See it. Let it go. Accept that it's there. And then let it be. And you'll find, counterintuitively, when you do that, it starts to disappear. And you realize you really didn't need it in the first place. Don't fight it. Accept it. Then let it go. Number 3, you might expect this. You have to get healthy. Like I said, the physical and the spiritual are inextricably intertwined. They're connected. They're forever connected. You could read all the stupid self-help books, listen to my silly podcast, my thoughts on how to fix this. But if you are smashing 400 milligrams of caffeine every day, you're smoking weed, you're addicted to nicotine, you're 60 pounds overweight, you never sleep, and you stare at bright lights all night long and you never see the sun, guess what, brother? Your brain is an inflamed mess. And that means that your vehicle is broken down and you will never be able to find peace. So, what you need to do is get your health right. Get your gut right. Get your nutrition right. Get your mind right. Get your nutrients right. Start moving your body. Detox, sweat, sauna, move. Some really, really helpful things by way of supplements. And by the way, the reason that I mention those other things first is because your foundation is not supplements. Your foundation is quality whole foods, unfatting yourself, moving, sweating, lifting, sleeping, getting sunlight, blocking bright light at night. That's the foundation. That aside, some things that are particularly helpful that I myself used today. Some of them. 1, magnesium. You should be consuming so much magnesium. Magnesium chloride, magnesium glycinate, L-threonate, acetyltaurinate. It doesn't matter. Just take magnesium. Just not magnesium oxide. L-theanine. Fantastic. It's an amino acid. It's found in green tea, but it's really cheap. One that's particularly helpful is rhodiola rosea. I actually need to restock up on it because on days when I feel like this, it just gives a nice like this kind of boost, you know? So that is physiological. Number 4, this is connected. You have got to reset your dopamine. I know you are dopamine addled. I see it. I know it. So here's what you need to do. You need to go on a dopamine detox. Stop smashing like super giga sugary, chemically messed up foods. The Panda, McDonald's, candy, sodas. Stop it. Stop them. Stop it. Your phone, you need to delete social media. And by the way, here's what you do. Here's a step by step on a week basis. Go for 1 week, 0 social media, 0 TV, 0 junk food of any kind. Work out every day, 0 music, a lot of walking outside, sleep amazing. Do this for 1 to 2 weeks, dopamine detox. And from there, you need to find ways to start to limit them. There's an app, for example, called Opal. I'm using it right now. I don't really want to be on social media today because I'm not in a great headspace. So I just block it. And you can actually block the apps so that you're not allowed to even open them. It helps me. It would help you. They're designed to steal your dopamine and addict you. And like I said, the physiological is the spiritual. You can escape that by resensitizing yourself to dopamine while you're doing this detox. Start doing things that are hard. Get in cold water. Do HIIT cardio. Incorporate fasting. Go for long, silent walks. Whatever you need to do, you need to desensitize yourself to pain and resensitize yourself to dopamine. Those are just some suggestions. Number 5. Pray to God. Ask for help. I don't feel that I need to give more to that other than to say that the solutions that I have come to in my life have come as gifts, breadcrumbs from God. There's no reason that you shouldn't be asking God for help. And I guarantee you, I promise you, if you do, He will help. And it won't be to give you all the solutions, but it will be to help you find the solutions to your own problems. Number 6, you need to be patient with yourself. Understand, really, you need to treat yourself kind of like an addict. And if you've been drowning in self-pity, or you've been cynical, or you've been hypercritical, or super judgmental, or just like a hater of all things fun and good, not anymore. But I was. And my friends and family will tell you that's the truth. If you've been like that, you got to understand these are deeply, deeply tread paths. Patterns are deeply wired. It will not be changed overnight. And it is, in fact, a matter of discipline. When you have that thought come up, for example, I was frustrated with a friend at work today. I was very frustrated. And I told him that. And that was reasonable. But then I found my mind wanting to linger on it and be like, oh, he's so like, da, 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 and I can't believe it. And I looked at my thoughts and I thought, that's not how I want to be. So I let it go. And I started thinking about something else. And it was hard because even now that's where my paths are paved. But you repave your paths a little bit every time you recognize the bad pattern and change it to a better pattern. Be patient with yourself and know that the answer is not one big push, but incremental progress over years and years and years. It's like in cars. You've seen cars. I don't know if you've seen cars. Lightning, he like has the like what's her name? Nessie? I don't remember. She's the road repaver thing. I don't think that's how road paving works actually, but it's kind of cool. But the first time he goes like really fast, he's you know, 'cause he's a race car. And but then he goes and the road the next day is all bumpy and they're riding on it. It's like it doesn't work because he tried to do it all in like one big blast. So They tear it up and they make him come back, and then he does it slowly, methodically, incrementally. Takes much longer, but it'll last forever. The same applies to repaving your mental paths. And the last suggestion is take time in silence, prayer, walking, and then write down, journal, actually write down all of your beliefs about yourself, about the world, whatever it is, the places that you're stuck, write those down, look at them, and see if they're true or not. If you can't honestly say, for example, like me with not feeling like I deserved a lot of things, I can't say that I feel like I deserve a lot of things, then write that down, and that's fine. But then maybe ask God to help you what you're missing there. But for a lot of these, you'll see like, wow, I really don't believe this, or like, I really shouldn't believe that, or wow, I really do believe that they're so much better than me, or I'm so much, whatever it is. And then write the opposite and look at it, consider it, start to repave your mental pathway. Very simple steps, but it's maybe the journey of a lifetime to overcome the path of the pessimist and learn to be a man of faith and optimism and light. But that's the path of joy. It's the path of, ironically, success. It's the path of a good life. And it's the path that I want to walk. And I've walked the other path, and I was miserable. And even though on this one I have a lot of days where I struggle, I'm grateful that I get to repave my own roads. And I pray, I hope that you will do the same. Because you're one of the boys. I want to take care of the boys. And I hope that you understand that God has something special for you, if only you will let Him give it to you. And then you can give that gift to the whole world. The whole world. In a way that I don't think you realize was possible. So in the words of, I can't remember the guy that wrote How to Win Friends and Influence People, be hearty in your approbation and lavish in your praise. Share light, and light will come back to you, because the law of the harvest has not been repealed. Much love.